In reading this article, I gotta say, I think this was the right decision. And they kind of allude to it, but we'll get into it. This is about The Last of Us Online, which has been in development for seemingly quite a while. The article does a pretty good job of explaining what's going on, so we'll just read it together. We realize many of you have been anticipating news around the project that we've been calling The Last of Us Online. There's no easy way to say this. We've made the incredibly difficult decision to stop development of the game. We know this news will be tough for many, especially our dedicated Last of Us factions community who've been following our multiplayer ambitions ardently. We're equally crushed as a studio as we were looking forward to putting it in your hands. We wanted to share with you some background on how we came to the decision. The multiplayer team has been in pre-production in this game since we were working on The Last of Us Part 2, crafting an experience that we felt was unique and had tremendous potential. As the multiplayer team iterated on their concept of The Last of Us Online during this time, their vision crystallized. The gameplay got more refined and satisfying, and we were enthusiastic about the direction in which we were headed. Okay, so far so good. In ramping up for full production, the massive scope of our ambition became clear. To release and support The Last of Us Online, we have to put all our studio resources behind supporting post-launch content for years to come, severely impacting development on future single-player games. So we had two paths: become a solely live service games studio, or continue to focus on single-player narrative games that have defined Naughty Dog's heritage. We're immensely proud of everyone at the studio that touched this project. The learnings and investments in technology in this game will carry on how we develop our projects and will be invaluable in the direction as we head as a studio. We have more than one ambitious brand new single player game that we're working on at Naughty Dog, and we cannot wait to share more about it when it becomes ready. So there's a lot to take in here. A couple things. Live service games are not the be all end all of the gaming world. And unfortunately, somehow we've gotten to this point. Jim Ryan made a really infamous statement about a year ago, basically saying that Sony was working on up to 12 different live service games and that they were pushing that going forward. Seems like Naughty Dog got swept up in that either by their own choice or by Jim Ryan's choice, probably the latter. And I think now that he's gone, they are reassessing kind of what they got themselves into. Examples of live service games that are successful, like Fortnite or Call of Duty, require teams to work on them ad nauseum because content comes out and is beaten almost immediately after it is released. That's just the nature of this, and people do lose out. They lose an investment in time and they want to go do something else. There always has to be something to grind, something to unlock. Seasons have to be tight. There has to be lots of events to keep people's attention. And that is unfortunately what live service has become. We've gotten away from the kind of generic multiplayer suite of games where they just release a couple maps and a couple modes that you just play with your friends for a while. It seems like that's not enough anymore. Whether gaming has driven live services or live services have driven gaming, the chicken and the egg, I don't know. But we've gotten to a place now where just traditional multiplayer isn't quite enough anymore. It definitely doesn't bring as much revenue, but it's also significantly cheaper to invest in. So there's that trade-off to be thought of as well. Ultimately, it seems like Naughty Dog realized that the live service machine would just be way too much to handle and decided to back away. And that's why I said at the beginning of this video, I think it's probably a good decision, because if they were just going to do basic multiplayer where you could log in and play a few modes, kind of like just even factions, even if it was just exactly what factions was before, seems like that's not good enough anymore. I don't know if that's driven from the community or driven from corporate bean counters, but it seems like that isn't good enough in today's space anymore. And that's unfortunate. And I think what we will see with articles and kind of news like this going forward is companies are probably going to begin to bow out of what live service is. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze the way it was in the past, because the market is so insanely saturated with every game that has to offer a live service pairing to a single player experience. And I think that as time goes on, they will back away from that. because studios like Call of Duty have cannibalized and monopolized themselves internally. That's all they're good for now, is making live service games. You don't see Epic Games working really on anything else other than Fortnite, because they constantly have to work on the next map and the next character and the next gun. And even Halo has been struggling as of late as to kind of make meaningful content for players to enjoy, even though they have dedicated themselves kind of partially to that. It seems like Naughty Dog was at that critical junction where they're like, you know what? We don't want this to be us, and I don't want another live service game. So I'm fine with that. If it was something where we could play and have a little bit of fun, maybe a little progression, that's one thing. But if people are demanding multiple seasons and events and modes and everything, that's a lot to take in, especially if Bungie has kind of taken over that role in Sony of the gatekeepers of what it takes to make a meaningful live service game, like Destiny 2, for example. I mean, look at all Bungie is doing is supporting that game just to keep up with the demands of the players, with constantly adding in seasons and constantly adding in little story beats and missions. This really spells, I think, a larger problem for the gaming industry. And maybe Naughty Dog is just self-aware enough to realize that this isn't for them. And for that, I applaud them. And I think it's good to look at this and say, maybe we're giving up too much of our own identities. I mean, they even say that, that's our rich heritage of our single player games. Maybe they're giving up too much of their own identity in order to make a mode in which people feel like has to be the thing. And I think as gamers, we owe it to ourselves to understand that not every game has to be your forever game. Sometimes a game can just be a 5 or 6 hour single player experience and it's over. It doesn't have to be something where you log into every day and work towards another achievement or another goal. And I think that maybe Naughty Dog thought, and I can't speak for them, of course, but I think that maybe they thought it would be a disappointment if it went down that road. I don't think it would have been. There's a lot of multiplayer games that I enjoy that aren't necessarily live service multiplayer games, that are somewhat more stagnant, and they're still fun to play. I know a lot of people say they're dead games. Like, I think Heroes of the Storm is a phenomenal example. I've been playing Heroes of the Storm for over a decade. Even if you think back to like how the early beta testing and everything, they haven't updated that game in 3 or 4 years. They released a blog post basically saying the game is in basically what they call maintenance mode, where they're not really making any more adjustments or tweaks. And you know what? We still play it. We still enjoy it. We still have a great time with it. So it's not like there always has to be something that you have to drive towards. Sometimes comfort food is just comfort food. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. It doesn't have to be souped up into being bombarded with new activities and modes and things and ways to spend money. And I wish that Naughty Dog would reassess where they're at, but clearly they've taken the stance that it's going to be a live service game or nothing. And in this case, they've chose nothing. We'll have to wait and see how the community reacts to this. I think we both know the answer. This article just dropped a couple hours ago, so it was getting towards the tail end of a Thursday night here on the East Coast. I'll be curious to see as the news kind of becomes more public tomorrow and more people have time to digest and kind of think about it. I think there's going to be an overwhelming negativity to this, but I would just caution all people who are negative towards this to really think about what they want their games to be and what they want their studios to be. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.